Catelyn Stark stood in the softly lit corridor just outside the Royal Solar in King's Landing, pressing her palms together in an effort to steady her nerves. The stone walls glowed amber under torchlight, highlighting tapestries that featured Baratheon stags intermingled with Tyrell roses. She wore a blue gown embroidered with the direwolf of House Stark on one sleeve and the golden rose of House Tyrell on the other, a small but telling symbol of the unity she hoped to create through her son Robb's marriage to Margaery Tyrell. In her mind, the alliance felt not just politically prudent, but also a chance for familial warmth in a realm that had been battered by wars and haunted by the threat from Essos. Beyond the archway, voices rose and fell. Some subdued, some exasperated, all entangled in the details of a wedding that would draw lords from across the 7 kingdoms. Taking a quiet breath, she stepped inside. The Solar had been converted into a makeshift planning chamber, with tall shutters open to let in the mild midday sun. Along a long table, partially covered in parchment and swatches of fabric, sat Margaery Tyrell, poised and confident even in her youth, exchanging gentle words with her grandmother, the formidable Olenna Tyrell, often whispered to be the true mastermind behind House Tyrell's cunning moves. A handful of ladies-in-waiting from both houses fluttered around them, brandishing quills to note the wedding's proposed color schemes, the order of ceremony, and the seating arrangement for guests. In an adjacent seat, Sansa Stark perched delicately, eyes bright with curiosity. She had taken a short respite from the capital's intrigues to assist in these wedding preparations, though she often found herself overshadowed by Margaery's natural ease at courtly matters. Margaery glanced up as Catelyn entered, offering a warm smile. "Lady Stark, I'm so glad you're here. Grandmother and I were just discussing the final site for the ceremony. We wondered if, perhaps, the royal sept would do, or whether you had other preferences. Some say we might hold it in the Great September of Baelor for greater pomp." Olenna Tyrell, resplendent in a green and gold gown that matched her sharp wit, made a small, dismissive gesture. "Oh, nonsense, dear. The Great September is suitable, but we must consider the king's convenience, along with the comfort of our beloved guests. If it's to be a gathering that unites the realm after so much bloodshed, we must ensure it's neither too overshadowed by old conflicts nor too meager for the sake of humility." Catelyn took a seat, folding her hands in her lap. "Robb has no strong preference, though I believe in respecting tradition. Since this wedding is meant to bring our houses together and reflect the realm's desire for peace, the Great September of Baelor could be an apt choice. But I also recall that King's Landing can be fraught with logistical issues. The Great September might prove challenging to guard if we expect half the lords of Westeros to attend." Margaery inclined her head. "You raise a fair point. Grandmother worries about everything from the lighting to the size of the choir. But truly, I believe the Great September would inspire awe and underscore the significance of the event. After all, my Lord Father expects to bring quite the retinue from Highgarden, and we do want this wedding to reaffirm unity." Sansa smiled shyly at Margaery, adding, "I can help coordinate decorations, if you like. We can incorporate both House Stark's northern style, those subtle blues and grays, and House Tyrell's vibrant greens and golds. I recall from the Joffrey." She paused, wincing at the memory of what had once been planned for her in King's Landing. "I recall a different occasion, but I learned something about how the city thrives on grand spectacle." Olenna waved a dismissive hand. Yes, the city does adore a spectacle, but let's not let it overshadow the bride and groom. My Margaery and your Robb must stand at the center, uniting the realm with their bond. 1,000 floral arrangements might be enough, or perhaps we should do 2,000. You never can have too many roses. The real question is whether we can ensure a smooth flow of guests in and out. The streets can become a riot if we fail to manage them. A wedding-turned fiasco helps no one. At that moment, a gentle knock on the partially open door heralded the arrival of 2 men. Ned Stark, the Hand of the King, and King Robert Baratheon himself, stocky, broad-chested, wearing a simplified version of royal garb. Robert exhaled with slight impatience. "Gods, you ladies must be up to your ears in wedding talk. I'd rather smash heads in the yard than debate about how many daisies to put on a dais. But I come with tidings, or rather, to see if you need anything from me." He offered a quick grin to Marjorie, who curtsied politely, and to Olenna, who gave a curt nod of respect. Ned closed the door behind them, giving Catelyn a brief, tender look. "My lady, I trust you're guiding matters sensibly?" Catelyn lifted a corner of her mouth in a subdued smile. "We're doing our best. This wedding has the potential to soothe old wounds across the realm if done with care." Then she glanced at Marjorie. "We've discussed the site, possibly the Great September of Baelor. Is that feasible, Your Grace?" Robert shrugged, letting out a short laugh. "Feasible enough. The City Watch can manage security, especially if you plan the festivities properly. We'll have half the lords in the realm here, no doubt, but we've handled tournaments with thrice the chaos. I suppose you want my official blessing to secure the sept for the day. Consider it done. Just don't expect me to fuss over flowers." Marjorie lowered her gaze gracefully. "We are grateful, Your Grace. My father, Lord Mace Tyrell, will handle part of the cost, naturally, for the feast and the necessary pageantry. House Stark might share it, I gather, in the spirit of unity. The king's own treasury can remain unburdened, if that pleases you. We only need the sept's availability and the city's goodwill." Olenna pressed her lips together. "Though we might accept some crown resources if it helps manage the logistical side. I recall fiascos in King's Landing where crowds crushed each other for a mere glimpse of a wedding procession. That would reflect poorly on everyone, so let's do it with order." Robert huffed. "You'll get your city watch, a thorough route, and enough guards to keep the riffraff from climbing the sept walls. If that suits you, so be it. But if I sense the cost bloating to feed half the city for free, I'll need to scold you all. The realm's finances remain stretched since the White Walkers, you know." Ned set a hand lightly on Robert's shoulder, guiding him to calm. "We'll ensure minimal strain. I do believe the Tyrell coffers stand ready. Right, Lady Olenna?" Olenna sniffed. "Of course, we are not beggars. My son might overdo the feasting, but it's only natural for a wedding of such significance. My granddaughter marries a Stark, uniting the North and the Reach in a single bond. Let's face it, that alone promises enough pomp to draw half the realm." At mention of that union, Catelyn's eyes shone with an almost motherly pride. "Robb is overjoyed at the prospect. Marjorie is gracious and wise beyond her years. We prayed for alliances that might heal the wounds left by the wars and the White Walker threat. This marriage might do just that." Robert folded his arms across his chest, scanning the table where sketches of dresses, decor, and seating charts were spread. If any marriage can bring the realm closer, it's a Stark-Tyrell union. The North and the Reach seldom had reason for animosity. Maybe this signals a new age of peace, so long as Essos doesn't throw a spanner in the works. Olenna's sharp gaze flicked to Robert. "Yes, we all hear the rumors from across the sea. Something about freedmen forging a massive force, dragons overshadowing Balerion. Let us hope their troubles remain theirs. This wedding might stand as a reminder that Westeros stands united if threatened. Perhaps that's enough to deter them from meddling." Marjorie glided a step forward, placing her fingertips on the table. "Still, might we consider inviting some foreign dignitaries? A show of good faith that Westeros is not isolationist? Freedmen delegates or the like, if they exist in the city. Or does that risk controversy?" The question hung in the air. Ned rubbed his chin. "A tricky matter. We seldom mix slavers' bay or freedmen's movements with Westerosi affairs. But offering them an invitation could signal we fear no threat from them, forging a respectful distance. Then again, it might incite rumors that we condone everything happening in Essos. Also, we have no direct freedmen ambassadors here in King's Landing. As far as I know, they remain in Essos." In that moment, footsteps rustled at the doorway. Entering quietly was a tall, robed figure, Varys, Master of Whisperers. He offered his trademark bow, voice soft and careful. "Your pardons, my lords, ladies. I heard mention of foreign invitations, and I come to note that it might be wise indeed to invite Daenerys Targaryen, or at least approach her with a courtesy letter for the wedding. Such a gesture could ease tensions, if she truly fosters no ill intent. At the very least, it shows we hold no hostility to her freedman empire, presuming she can travel. If she declines, so be it. If she accepts, we glean her disposition. Robert let out a sudden bark of laughter that had no humor in it. Gods, Varys, you always have a cunning angle. Invite Daenerys Targaryen, the mother of unstoppable dragons, rumored queen of freedmen, to King's Landing for a wedding? She might see it as a trap or a trivial matter. Or she might come with a horde of monstrous beasts. You realize the risk. Varys bowed again. True, your grace, but consider the possibility that she might interpret an invitation as a friendly gesture. Tensions are high. If we show we harbor no immediate enmity, perhaps it forestalls conflict. She once aided the realm against the dead, after all. So why not extend a polite courtesy? If she truly harbors no designs on Westeros, she may respond warmly or politely decline. Marjorie exchanged a glance with Olenna, who shrugged minutely. Then Marjorie addressed Robert. Your Grace, it is a bold suggestion. Our wedding might then become a stage for bridging old divides. We wanted to unify the realm, yes, but if Daenerys Targaryen does attend, half the lords might quake in fear. Yet half might also see it as a sign that she will not war with us. The question is, do we want that overshadowing what should be a joyous union? Robert scratched his beard, eyeing Ned and Catelyn for their thoughts. Ned's expression was pensive. The idea is radical, but it does align with our desire to show no hostility if Daenerys doesn't provoke us. The wedding is a bright event. If we do invite her, we must accept the possibility that freedmen or dragons appear. That could cause panic. But if it is done carefully, with her bringing a small retinue, we might glean valuable information about her stance. Catelyn let out a slow breath. My main concern is overshadowing the marriage. This is about Robb and Marjorie, forging a tie that helps the realm. Do we risk turning it into an event overshadowed by speculation about Daenerys' presence? The bride and groom's day might become a side note to a rumored alliance with the Freedmen's Empire. Olenna sniffed. Indeed, yet I see advantage. If we quell rumors of conflict across the sea by showing courtesy, Marjorie's wedding might gain historical significance beyond a mere bond of houses. It might become the day Westeros opened a door to Daenerys diplomatically, or at least attempted it. Sansa, who had remained mostly quiet, interjected in a small voice. Sometimes gestures like that do shape the future. If Daenerys came and it all went well, we might avoid war. Or if she politely declines, at least we extended a hand. But we must be prepared for the lords to object. Some will say it's madness to invite a Targaryen queen with monstrous dragons, especially bigger than Balerion. They recall how one Targaryen conquest shaped the realm for centuries. Another might overshadow it entirely. Marjorie's gaze sharpened with curiosity. And you, Robert, do you find it madness or a cunning move? Robert let out a gravelly chuckle. I find it half mad, but cunning, yes, in a sense. My gut still says Daenerys might not even accept. She's building some freedman's empire in Essos, so why cross the sea for a wedding? But what if it shows the realm that we stand unafraid, open to parley? It might even quell this talk of unstoppable dragons. If she truly means no harm, she might come with only a modest entourage, or politely refuse and send a gift. Either outcome helps us gauge her intentions. Ned placed his hand on the table, nodding. We could ensure a letter is drafted carefully, welcoming her as a friend who once fought the White Walkers with us. We clarify it's a joyous union, that we do not presume to overshadow her dominion in Essos, but we would be honored if she or a representative attended. If she scorns us, that's telling. If she attends in good faith, also telling. Catelyn still looked uneasy. We must also consider Robb's perspective. He might not appreciate his wedding overshadowed by Daenerys' presence. Should we consult him before sending such an invitation? Marjorie lifted a hand in a graceful wave. Perhaps so, though I suspect Robb might not oppose it if it truly aids the realm's peace. He has a strong sense of duty. Let me speak with him or let Sansa carry word. We can gauge his reaction. He might actually welcome the notion that the wedding fosters a broader unity, though the risk of overshadowing remains. Robert gave a final, resigned grunt. Well, talk to the boy. If he's not opposed, I guess we can draft a letter. I won't mind the chance to measure this Daenerys if she does show. Especially if her rumored monstrous dragons remain behind. Then again, if she tries anything, we'll have half the realm's lords present. Might be a standoff no one wants. Olenna raised an eyebrow with wry amusement. Very well. Let us table that matter for the moment. Meanwhile, Marjorie and I must finalize the menu. We have some novelty items from Dorne, as well as a lavish sweet course that might delight the North. We want a feast that merges all corners of Westeros. We'll ask for your input, Lord Stark, to see if the Northmen feel welcome. Ned nodded kindly. The North is simpler in tastes, but we do enjoy hearty fare. I leave it to your capable hands, Lady Olenna. Let them see the generosity of the Reach. The conversation meandered into less fraught territory. Courses, entertainment, possible minstrels, the scheduling of a small tournament for the wedding's eve, and how to handle the hundreds of minor lords likely to converge. Sansa contributed excitedly, describing what songs might best represent both Stark heritage and Tyrell flamboyance. Marjorie promised to incorporate northern ballads in the post-dinner performances. Olenna rolled her eyes at some suggestions but made notes all the same. Robert sat back for a portion of this, occasionally sipping from a goblet of wine, letting the ladies arrange details. The tension over Daenerys' potential invitation hovered, but he allowed them the chance to handle simpler wedding matters in peace. Eventually, the group disbanded to tackle tasks individually. Marjorie and Sansa withdrew to the Queen's apartments to examine swatches of fabric for bridesmaid attire. Olenna, escorted by an attendant, ventured off to secure the gold cloak commandant for a discussion on city crowd control. Robert disappeared to the training yard, muttering about needing fresh air. Ned lingered near Catelyn, walking with her down a quiet corridor, the echo of their footsteps against the stone. They paused at a window, sunlight streaming in. Catelyn turned to Ned, voice hushed. My love, do you think it wise we add another layer to these wedding plans by possibly inviting Daenerys? We only want a joyful union for Robb. I know the realm's future might hinge on bridging divides, but is it worth the risk? Ned studied her face, seeing the flicker of maternal concern. I share your worry, yet consider how quickly rumors swirl that dragons overshadow Balerion. If we do nothing, lords may fear an imminent invasion. A small gesture might quell some panic. And if Daenerys truly harbors no ill will, she might politely decline, sending a gift as Robert speculated. She exhaled quietly. Then so be it. For Robb's sake, let's at least inform him of the possibility. If it disturbs him, we can drop the idea. At the end of the day, it's his wedding. Ned nodded, taking her hand gently. Let's find him, then. I believe he's sparring in the courtyard behind the stables. They departed, and upon reaching the courtyard, they spotted Robb Stark indeed exchanging blows with a practiced sword against one of his northern bannermen. At the sight of his mother and father, he concluded the spar, saluted his partner, and approached. Despite the mild southern climate, he wore a light chain over a leather jerkin, chestnut hair damp with sweat. Mother, father, he greeted warmly, though a mild tension in his eyes suggested he sensed something afoot. You two rarely come together like this unless something demands my attention. Catelyn offered a gentle smile. Robb, we were discussing wedding arrangements with Marjorie. All is well, but a new idea surfaced. The notion of inviting Daenerys Targaryen, yes, the rumored freedman's queen from Essos, to the ceremony as a gesture of goodwill. We wanted to ask your opinion before making any decision. Robb blinked in surprise. Daenerys Targaryen? The one who helped defeat the White Walkers but then vanished to Slaver's Bay, forging an empire with Varos? The rumors say her dragons dwarf the old legends. Why invite her to my wedding? Ned explained quietly. Because tensions rise between her freedman empire and the free cities. Some fear they might cross the narrow sea eventually. If we extend an invitation, it might show we hold no animosity, maybe opening a path for peace. But we also risk overshadowing your day with talk of foreign affairs. So we want your thoughts. Robb paused, wrestling with the notion. I never expected my wedding to be a stage for such grand politics. Marjorie and I want to unify Westeros. If inviting Daenerys prevents future war, that's a noble cause, right? But does it turn our wedding into a political spectacle? Will half the lords be too busy gawking at a Targaryen queen? Or worse, if she does show with dragons in tow, might it cause panic in King's Landing? Catelyn placed a soothing hand on his arm. We can limit how many beasts accompany her, presumably, or she might decline politely sending a token. The mere gesture could defuse rumors that we plan to stand against her. On the other hand, if she accepted and brought monstrous dragons, the day might indeed be overshadowed. If you prefer to keep the focus on your union with Marjorie, we'll drop the matter. Robb's gaze drifted. He exhaled. I never crave the spotlight for spectacle's sake, but I am not naive. The realm has been battered by wars. If a courtesy could spare us a future war with Freedman's legions, maybe it's worthwhile. Let me think. Marjorie and I can discuss, but I lean toward letting the crown handle the invitation. If the realm is truly under one banner, perhaps I owe it to the realm to allow that possibility. So yes, let me speak with Marjorie. I suspect she'll be open to it if it truly fosters peace. Ned nodded, relief tempering his worry. Very well, son. We'll wait for your word. If you two decide it's worth the risk, I'll help draft the letter. If not, we'll bury the idea. The king stands open to either approach. Robb agreed, then parted ways to find Marjorie, leaving Ned and Catelyn exchanging thoughtful looks. The day drifted onward. Word soon reached Robert that Robb had granted his blessing, provided Marjorie concurred. Marjorie quickly sent word back that she, too, accepted the risk. So that evening, in a smaller gathering in the King's Solar, Ned, Robert, and a handful of scribes composed a tentative letter inviting Daenerys Targaryen to the wedding of Robb Stark and Marjorie Tyrell in the Great September of Baelor, disclaiming any intention of conflict and expressing gratitude for her past aid against the White Walkers. They couched it in the politest terms, acknowledging her new freedman's empire without endorsing or condemning it, simply stating that they valued her presence as a sign of goodwill if she deemed it appropriate. Robert, leaning on a table, snorted. I can't believe I'm signing a letter inviting a Targaryen queen to a Stark Tyrell wedding. The realm's changed beyond measure. But if it keeps dragons from roasting my city, so be it. Ned sighed with a faint grim smile. One can never predict the arcs of fate, my friend. Let us hope Daenerys sees it as an olive branch and not a trap. We do our part. That's all we can do. They sealed the letter with the royal seal and House Tyrell's signet, planning to dispatch it by swift ship to the ports rumored to be near Slaver's Bay or Pentos, unsure if it would ever reach Daenerys' hands. The next days saw further bustle as wedding preparations soared. Tents sprouted in the fields outside King's Landing for lords arriving early. The city watched tightened security. Sansa eagerly aided Marjorie with final gown details, weaving northern colors with Tyrell rose motifs. Catelyn oversaw lodging arrangements, ensuring no old feuds placed rival lords side by side. Olenna Tyrell orchestrated the feast's courses, determined to outshine every wedding King's Landing had seen, short of perhaps the fiasco in Joffrey's era. In the midst of this flurry, a pair of ravens from the Vale arrived, one carrying Lord Yohn Royce's acceptance, the other Lord Nestor's regrets. Another from Dorne confirmed that Prince Doran might attend in person, if his health allowed. The North's bannermen promised a strong presence, from the Umbers to the Manderleys. The realm's lords evidently saw in this wedding an opportunity for renewed stability after the terrors of the White Walkers. Yet behind every polite acceptance, a new rumor brewed. Will the Freedman Empire send a representative? Will dragons overshadow the day? One dusk, as the color of the sky turned a deep violet, Stannis Baratheon rode into King's Landing from Dragonstone, accompanied by a small retinue. He joined Robert in a private salon in the Red Keep, where Ned was also summoned. Stannis dismounted his travel gear with typical stoicism and offered minimal greetings. Robert poured him a cup of strong wine, raising an eyebrow in question. Stannis sipped, then said in his low, unwavering tone, "Brother, I hear you plan a lavish wedding for Robb Stark, and you invited Daenerys Targaryen? Is that rumor correct? Robert grumbled, swirling his own cup. We did, at least we sent a letter. Doesn't mean she'll come. But the Tyrells and Starks see it as a chance to quell suspicion. If she refuses or never replies, so be it. Stannis's face remained impassive. And if she comes, riding dragons bigger than Balerion, what then? Do we simply host her in the Great September, hoping she doesn't set it ablaze? Ned interjected calmly. We suspect if she attends, she'll do so in good faith. She fought with us once before. We have no reason to assume malice, aside from rumor. Better to extend courtesy than cower behind inaction. Stannis set his cup down. I pray you are right. If Freedman's legions or monstrous dragons fill the skies over King's Landing, the city may panic. The lords might see it as a power move, or it might indeed be a peaceful sign. The dice are cast. Still, I would increase city watch presence for the wedding day, discreetly to maintain order. Robert nodded. We will. I'd have done so anyway. The entire realm's lords will be here, or near enough. I won't let pickpockets or riots overshadow the ceremony. That said, if a Targaryen queen arrives unannounced with dragons, the watch can do little. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Ned folded his arms. We've done what we can. The wedding planning proceeds. We unify the realm in celebration. If Daenerys chooses to appear, we'll handle it with courtesy. Meanwhile, let's focus on ensuring the day flows smoothly. The last major wedding here ended in fiasco, if I recall. We can't repeat that. Robert's face darkened at the memory of Joffrey's wedding fiasco, though the details had receded in the swirl of subsequent events. No fiascos. Let this union represent the peace we want. Enough. I'm tired. We meet the morrow to finalize security details. So ended that conversation, with Stannis leaving for his quarters, dissatisfaction etched across his face. Ned and Robert parted ways, each weighed by the swirl of possibilities. The wedding date drew nearer, the city's tension rising in tandem with the excitement. Catelyn and Olenna pressed on, finalizing guest lists, ensuring no house was overlooked. Marjorie busied herself selecting music, a sumptuous gown that combined northern modesty with Tyrell flourish, and delicate floral arrangements that paid homage to both House Stark's Direwolf and House Tyrell's Golden Rose. Robb, meanwhile, took counsel with his northern bannermen, instructing them on courtesy while in the capital, reminding them not to spark needless friction with southern lords. He also found moments to slip away with Marjorie for quiet talks, forging the bond that would soon be solemnized in front of half the realm. At times, Sansa confided in Marjorie about her own hopes for the future, reflecting on the White Walkers' defeat, the changes in the north, and the uncertain swirl of Freedman's rumors from across the sea. Marjorie comforted her, asserting that if Daenerys once saved them from the dead, perhaps she wouldn't aim to devour Westeros with monstrous dragons. Sansa found mild reassurance in that, though the perpetual mention of bigger than Balerion haunted her. She recalled reading old tomes in the Red Keep's library about Balerion's wings blotting out the sun and fire forging the Iron Throne itself. As the wedding day approached, 1,000 tasks threatened to overwhelm. The final touches on the Great September of Baelor included tapestries of House Stark's Direwolf and House Tyrell's Rose, plus subtle Baratheon stags to honor the king's presence. Lords arrived daily, swelling the city's population. The crown had to provide lodging, feasts, and hunts for them to stave off boredom. Meanwhile, men whispered quietly about the distant Freedman Empire, wondering if Daenerys Targaryen might indeed sail with a war fleet or appear unexpectedly in the sky. No sign of an official acceptance or refusal from Daenerys reached the city, though the letter had presumably left by swift ship. Some lords scoffed that she'd never come. Others dreaded that she might appear in a final moment of dramatic flair. One evening, just 3 days before the wedding, Ned found Robert in the royal gardens, newly arranged with Tyrell florals, lost in thought. Approaching slowly, Ned asked softly, "Anything on your mind, Robert?" The king let out a weary sigh. "Everything, Ned. This wedding grows bigger by the hour. The city brims with tension. I half suspect a riot might break out if the Freedman Empire so much as sends an emissary. But I suppose it's better to see the realm feast than brood on war. And you? Ned offered a small smile. I share your hopes for a smooth ceremony. Catelyn says the bride's dress is near finished, and Marjorie's calm. Robb is likewise prepared. We simply orchestrate the motions. If no dread news arrives from Essos in the next few days, the wedding might truly unify the realm. Then, afterwards, we deal with whatever storms come. Robert nodded, shoulders relaxing slightly. Let it be so. The realm deserves a respite. Even if Daenerys or Varys lurk beyond the sea, let them. Perhaps we'll see a letter from her after the wedding. Some official word that we remain at peace. Thus, the final hours of planning continued. In the Great September, workers hung the last of the banners. In the royal kitchens, chefs tested recipes for sweet pastries rumored to be the Tyrell signature dish. Lords from the Riverlands, the Vale, the Westerlands, and the Iron Islands arrived, though the latter mostly out of courtesy. The entire city hummed with expectancy. Yet the wedding had not yet occurred. Only its endless rehearsals, seatings, menu tastings, and strategic discussions among lords. A hush of anticipation fell upon King's Landing as the day loomed. Rumors flitted that the Freedman Empire had finally launched a campaign on Volantis, but no official word reached the capital. Ned, Robert, and the small council decided to leave that matter aside until after the wedding, fearing to overshadow Robb and Marjorie's joyous union. If war in Essos broke out, it would soon become unstoppable news. For now, they let the wedding overshadow everything else. So the city breathed, waiting. Marjorie and Olenna made their final checks with Catelyn for the ceremony in the Great September, determined that seating arrangements placed the north near the Tyrells in an unmistakable sign of unity. The crown's own officials handled security, while lesser lords jockeyed for favorable seats. Lords from Dorne arrived with gifts, hoping for a new era of friendship. The Vale's knights pledged their presence for the tournament planned 2 days after the wedding. Everyone braced for an event that might overshadow all others in recent memory, forging an alliance that signaled Westeros' perseverance after the White Walker horrors. Still no definitive answer from Daenerys or any freedman official. Some lords whispered that was for the best. Others confided that perhaps she planned a last-moment arrival, a Targaryen flourish that would shock the city. Robert grumbled privately that if she meant to appear, she'd better not bring monstrous dragons that could panic the crowds. Ned took it upon himself to quell such rumors, reminding lords that they had enough on their plate ensuring the union proceeded without incident. Perhaps, in the aftermath, they would address Essos. And so it went, the tension swirling under the surface. With the wedding day imminent, final discussions concluded. No sign of freedman ships approaching. The Watch reported calm seas. The wedding was poised to occur in a matter of hours, an auspicious morning in the Great September of Baelor, with lords, ladies, and knights thronging the city in excited chatter. Robb tried on the official Stark regalia. Marjorie tested her gown's final adjustments. The entire realm prepared for a spectacle of unity and love. Meanwhile, the question of unstoppable dragons overshadowing Balerion the Dread remained unaddressed, a lurking shadow across the sea. But for these final days, at least, Westeros placed its hope in the wedding's promise. A promise that the realm could find joy again, no matter what storms might come from beyond. Daenerys Targaryen stood in the high gallery of her palace in Astapor, sunlight filtering through the tall arches and illuminating the polished marble floors. A hush lay over the room, its vibrant tapestries and intricately carved pillars a testament to how far Slaver's Bay had come since the days of whips and chains. Now freedmen labored for themselves, forging a new society under her guidance, and under the looming, watchful influence of Varys. Only a moment ago, she had received the message from King's Landing. A formal invitation addressed to her, to Jon, and most pointedly, it included a special request that Varys attend as well. The letter bore the seals of King Robert Baratheon and the hand, Eddard Stark, co-signed by the Tyrells, bidding Daenerys to grace the upcoming wedding ceremony of Robb Stark and Marjorie Tyrell. Though she had expected some contact eventually, after all, word of her freedman's empire had surely spread across the sea. She had not imagined it would arrive as a wedding invitation. She reread the parchment, her mind stirring with uncertain possibilities. The midday warmth pressed gently against the columns, and beyond the gallery's far edge, Daenerys could spot the city's transformation in the distance. New stone domes rising to house the multiplying dragons, freedmen's markets buzzing with commerce, and the harbor crowded with ships bearing the sigil of the freedmen's legions or the combined Targaryen and Valyrian insignia that Varos had popularized. Essos was no longer a place of scattered city-states ignoring her existence. Now they all whispered, if not trembled, over the freedmen's swift expansions. The triarchs of Volantis approached capitulation or negotiation. In time, she had little doubt, nearly all Essos might unify under a freedman's banner, guided by Daenerys and Varos, if that was truly the path fate dictated. She set the letter aside with a soft sigh just as footsteps signaled the arrival of Jon Snow. Jon paused in the gallery's entrance. His dark hair fell just past his ears in unkempt waves, a testament to long days traveling between Meereen, Yunkai, and Astapor. Though he carried a measure of authority in the freedman's eyes, Daenerys knew he sometimes felt like a stranger in this land, having grown up in the stark chill of the north. And yet, he had joined her after the White Walker's defeat, forging a bond that merged Targaryen destiny with a sense of duty inherited from Eddard Stark. Jon's gaze found Daenerys, reading her expression. "You seem unsettled," he remarked, stepping closer. The echo of his boots on marble died quickly in the airy space. "I saw a messenger leaving. Did we receive news from Westeros?" Daenerys exhaled gently, brushing a hand over the letter's parchment. "We have, yes, an invitation of all things. Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark have requested that I attend a wedding, Robb Stark's wedding to Margaery Tyrell. They specifically ask for you as well. And—" She paused, turning the letter so he might see the scrawled lines. "They also name Varos. They want him to attend too." Jon's brow furrowed. The mention of Robb's wedding brought a flicker of longing and uncertainty across his face, but he steadied himself quickly. He looked at her with a hint of concern. "Varos? I suppose that makes sense, given the rumors swirling around Freedman's expansions and these monstrous dragons overshadowing Balerion. King's Landing might want to see the man behind that power. But it's risky. If Varos interprets this as some ploy, or if the King's men see it as an opportunity to corner us, it could end badly." Daenerys stroked the letter's edge. "I suspect they aim to gauge our intentions. If they see us in person, maybe they'll fear us less, or confirm their worst suspicions. But it's also a gesture that we have not lost all ties to Westeros. After all, I once fought alongside them against the White Walkers. That memory lingers. The letter references that shared struggle." Jon nodded, glancing toward the wide arches where a gentle ocean breeze stirred the silken drapes. "So do you intend to go? The Freedman's Empire is on the cusp of integrating Volantis, or at least negotiating terms. You might be needed here, and the risk remains that King's Landing could be a trap or, at the very least, an intensely awkward affair, overshadowing Robb's wedding." She folded her arms. "I might accept. Westeros once joined me in a war for the living, and though much has happened since, I've never aimed to conquer them as the old Targaryens did. Freedman's conquests focus on destroying slavery in Essos. Still, King Robert once declared a vendetta against Targaryens in the rebellion. We overcame the White Walkers, yes, but that doesn't erase all enmity. If I go, I must do so in a spirit of peace, and readiness should they prove hostile." She paused, letting her gaze rest on Jon. "But what do you think? The letter addresses you specifically. Would you want to return to Westeros for such an event?" Jon cast his eyes downward, clearly grappling with thoughts of home. "Part of me longs to see my family. My father, Ned, likely had a hand in writing this, or at least endorsing it. He probably wonders if I'm truly safe here, if Freedman's expansions overshadow my own identity. But the illusions about who I am, that is complicated. We agreed to keep my lineage as Rhaegar's son hidden for now. If I set foot in King's Landing, that secret might come under scrutiny, especially if certain lords remember me from the White Walker battles." Daenerys took a step forward, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. We keep that hidden, yes, for now. The freedmen revere you as a champion, but the question of your lineage might cause chaos in Westeros. The realm sees you as Ned Stark's son, and your presence alongside me could stir old rumors or new speculation. The letter specifically requests both of us, though, so it must mean they accept your role here. Let's trust we can maintain secrecy. He let out a long breath. Agreed. So we proceed carefully. If we do go, we'll keep that quiet. After all, your own heritage is enough to overshadow any event. They likely fear freedmen more than they recall the old Targaryen lines now. Daenerys nodded, about to respond when footsteps echoed again. Swift, purposeful strides. The tall doors at the far side of the gallery parted, revealing Varos. He entered with that peculiar aura that always made Daenerys sense a shift in the very air. Dressed in crimson robes emblazoned with an abstract flame motif, he carried himself with regal calm, the glow of the midday sun catching threads of gold woven into the fabric. Freedmen's guards stationed outside bowed in deference, stepping aside as the sorcerer advanced. His eyes, dark and intense, studied Daenerys and Jon for a moment before he spoke. "Daenerys Stormborn, Jon Snow," Varro said, his tone even. "I heard from the Watchers that a messenger came with a letter from across the narrow sea. Something about King's Landing, yes? I suspect it pertains to us if your faces are any indication." He halted a few paces away, hands folded in his sleeves. Daenerys inclined her head. "Yes, Varos, we just read it. Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark invite me, Jon, and specifically you to attend Robb Stark's wedding in King's Landing, a union with Marjorie Tyrell. It's quite an unusual gesture. Jon and I have discussed the idea of going, though we are uncertain how wise it is." She paused, meeting Varos's gaze. "They named you directly in the invitation. They want you there, possibly as a show that Freedman's empire does not hide, or that they wish to see the force behind the dragons overshadowing Balerion." A hush fell. Varos stood silent a few heartbeats. Outside, a faint caw of gulls drifted in from the harbor. Jon cleared his throat quietly, exchanging a look with Daenerys. The Freedman's empire had come to revolve so much around Varos's presence and the Red Priests who revered him as a living instrument of R'hllor. That the king in Westeros specifically requested him at a wedding underscored how strongly rumors of Freedman's unstoppable might had penetrated Westeros. The question, would Varos deign to go? Varos paced a slow circle, the faint swish of his robes whispering over the polished floor. "So they wish to see me in the flesh, presumably. Perhaps gauge if I truly hold unstoppable flame, or if our Freedman's expansions are as all-consuming as rumor claims. A wedding is a peaceful pretext. The North's heir weds the Tyrell Rose, an alliance that, ironically, might unify much of Westeros. Perhaps they fear we will overshadow that union with Freedman's dominion. Or they hope I come in peace." Daenerys watched him intently. "They might want to reassure themselves we have no designs on conquering Westeros. They also likely want to show they do not fear inviting the Freedman's figurehead. I can see benefit in clarifying we do not seek war. But also, we risk stepping into a potential trap, or at least an environment where half the lords might see you as a threat." Jon nodded. "We discussed that if we go, we show courtesy. We do not bring an entire legion or all our dragons. Perhaps a handful of ships, a moderate retinue. But the letter specifically requests you. I wonder if they hope to glean your disposition." Again silence reigned. Varos's gaze drifted to the high arches. When he spoke, his voice was measured. "For so long, I have devoted my powers to forging Freedmen's councils in Slaver's Bay, unifying Essos under R'hllor's flame. Volantis stands on the brink of negotiation. My generals can handle the final steps if I depart for a short time. The question is, does attending a wedding in King's Landing serve R'hllor's plan or jeopardize it? This Freedman empire can survive if I am absent for a span. Yes, but I must weigh whether a direct encounter with Westeros helps or hinders." Daenerys stepped forward, her tone quiet but firm. "You've repeatedly claimed you do not intend to subjugate Westeros. If that is true, let them see it. Let them see us in good faith. We can remind them we fought the White Walkers together. Freedmen's expansions remain in Essos, not crossing the sea. If we never appear when invited, they may suspect our silence masks designs on their throne. Varos studied her, then Jon. Another hushed moment stretched. Finally, he inclined his head slightly. Yes, I will attend. My generals can oversee Slavers Bay's final transitions. Volantis can wait. If we show ourselves openly at this wedding, perhaps it staves off conflict. But I must caution. I will not enter the lion's den unprepared. We bring a moderate escort, enough to ensure no lord or king attempts a cunning betrayal. Lawloress flame guides me. But mortal cunning can be dangerous if unacknowledged. Relief flickered in Daenerys's eyes, though she maintained composure. She turned to Jon. Then we proceed. We keep your lineage hidden, as we said. Let Westeros see you as simply Ned Stark's ally in Essos, or something akin to that. The Freedmen's Empire is large enough that no one will question your presence at my side. And if they do, we have excuses. The realm knows we fought the dead together. Jon nodded. Yes, let it remain so for now. I'd rather not split the realm's attention with that old secret. My father... He caught himself, correcting quietly. Ned would understand the caution, I suspect. So, in that case, we must plan our departure. The ships we'll take, the dragons we bring. Varos's mouth curved into a mild smile. Yes, we shall sail in a modest fleet. Let freedmen see that we do not cower from traveling abroad, and let Westeros see we do not come with an armada. Daenerys, choose which dragons accompany us carefully. Perhaps a half-dozen mid-sized beasts, not the largest that overshadow Balerian's memory. I will bring Maelstrom for personal transport, though his size might cause alarm. Still, the letter specifically named me, so they should expect a demonstration. Jon swallowed. Maelstrom is colossal, Varos. The entire city might panic at his approach. Varos nodded. And so they realize we hold unstoppable might, yet come in courtesy. That is the message. Lawloress flame must stand visible. If we wanted war, we'd arrive with the entire brood. Instead, a measured presence. As for your freedmen's councils, Daenerys, they remain stable, yes. She nodded. Stable enough. My advisors and your generals can handle daily governance for a month or two if needed. We must assume the wedding and potential negotiations might keep us in Westeros for a time. We'll sail with a dozen ships, each bearing freedmen's or Targaryen banners. That alone signals we come peacefully, not invading. If they respond with suspicion, we can depart swiftly by dragon. So it was settled. They spent the next days orchestrating a discreet departure from Astapor. Freedmen's officials grumbled at losing both Daenerys and Varos at once, but her circle of local leaders pledged to carry on their tasks, finishing negotiations with Volantis as needed. Varos conferred with his top generals, instructing them to maintain freedmen's councils, quell any local rebellions, and proceed with a cautious approach to Volantis. The freedmen in Yunkai and Meereen heard rumors that their queen was venturing to Westeros for a diplomatic event. Reactions varied. Some cheered, others fretted that the freedmen empire might be left vulnerable. Varos's parting reassurances calmed most, for they saw him as nearly divine in matters of flame and prophecy. Jon readied a small retinue of loyal freedmen legionnaires and a handful of Dothraki outriders, ensuring Daenerys had an entourage representative of the Empire's new unity. The chosen dragons included 2 mid-sized that had proven calm around strangers, plus a few younger ones for show. Meanwhile, Maelstrom loomed as the largest beast, set to carry Varos himself, though it was questionable how such a colossal creature would land near King's Landing without causing chaos. 2 weeks before the wedding procession was scheduled to begin, they set sail from Astapor under bright morning skies. A dozen ships in total, sails dyed black and red, embroidered with the 3-headed dragon of Targaryen or the flame-laced insignia Varos had introduced. Daenerys took the lead ship, accompanied by Jon Oberyn Martell, who had found his way into freedmen's circles earlier, intrigued by the cause, and a handful of freedmen officers. Varos, preferring to remain near his dragon, boarded a vessel large enough to accommodate Maelstrom if he chose to rest on deck, though often the gargantuan creature soared overhead instead. Freedmen's legionnaires, in crisp uniforms, manned each ship, a show of discipline rather than conquest. The journey across the narrow sea bore an undercurrent of tension. On calm nights, Daenerys walked the deck with Jon, reflecting on how odd it felt to return to Westeros under these circumstances. A wedding invitation for a young man she barely knew, though she remembered Robb as Ned Stark's heir. Oberyn teased them about the potential for dramatic arrivals and how the realm might react to Varos's unstoppable presence. All the while, the freedmen officers practiced polite protocols for interacting with Westerosi lords who might bristle at foreign customs or the Red Priests chanting. Varos sometimes soared overhead on Maelstrom, scanning for signs of hostility. But the crossing was peaceful, no storms or pirates daring to challenge a freedman fleet rumored to carry monstrous dragons. Near the end of the second week, the coastline of the Stormlands appeared on the horizon, rugged cliffs and swirling gulls heralding their approach to Blackwater Bay. A hush settled across the decks as freedmen beheld Westeros for the first time. Some dreaded the realm that once harbored the White Walkers, while others felt awe at the thought of forging a peaceful link between freedmen's dominion and the old monarchy. Daenerys stood at the prow, sea breeze stirring her silver-gold hair, scanning the horizon for signs of King's Landing. Jon lingered at her side, trying to quell the storm in his heart. Memories of Winterfell and the North mingled with uneasy questions about how Ned or Robb might greet him. Yet for now, he remained Daenerys' ally and friend, not a Targaryen prince revealed to the world. As they rounded the final stretch toward the city's harbor, they spotted a modest group of ships flying Baratheon and Tyrell banners, presumably to greet them. From the vantage of the freedmen's decks, King's Landing rose in the distance, a sprawling mass of sun-baked stone walls, with the Red Keep perched high on Aegon's Hill. Daenerys remembered how once she had flown overhead with only a handful of dragons to defeat the White Walkers. Now she arrived by sea with a new empire at her back. How would the city greet her? On the freedmen's lead ship, Oberyn wore a wry grin, pointing out the port's jetties. "It seems dear Renly awaits us. Word is that the king's younger brother stands in King's Landing, anticipating our approach. Best brace for formal welcomes and anxious stares." Sure enough, as they drew closer, they discerned figures on the dock. Men in bright colors, carrying Baratheon stags, Tyrell roses, and, some ways behind, a handful of gold cloaks. Renly himself, recognizable by his handsome features and easy smile, stood near the water's edge, wearing a green cloak pinned with a golden stag. The freedmen's ships adjusted their sails, preparing to anchor. Jon inhaled sharply at the sight of so many Westerosi men waiting. Daenerys set her jaw in quiet determination, glancing overhead. She glimpsed a massive silhouette, Maelstrom gliding in slow arcs, scanning for a safe place to land. The time had come to meet this old realm on its own shores again. With carefully arranged precision, the freedmen disembarked from the lead vessels, Daenerys stepping ashore first, flanked by Jon, Oberyn, and a half-dozen freedmen legionnaires in formal attire. Bystanders along the dock stared, some in awe at the sight of Targaryen sigils flying from the masts. The hush was tangible as Daenerys advanced toward Renly, who approached with an affable bow. "My lady Daenerys Targaryen," Renly said, voice bright with courtesy. "Welcome to Westeros once more. I come on behalf of King Robert and Lord Stark to greet you. We trust your voyage was fair." He let his gaze roam briefly to Jon, nodding in recognition. "And Jon Snow, if I recall. And you, Prince Oberyn?" The Dornish presence is always a surprise. Oberyn offered a flourish of a bow. "Lord Renly, always a pleasure. I've been traveling with Daenerys' freedman empire for my own reasons, mostly curiosity. I hope that does not complicate matters." Renly gave a mildly amused shrug. "Complications are the norm in King's Landing, but we are here for a wedding, after all. The city braces for a grand union. We only hope your arrival fosters harmony, not alarm." Daenerys inclined her head. "We come peacefully. We bring a small retinue, enough to ensure our safety. I come at Robert Baratheon's invitation to attend the wedding of Robb Stark and Margaery Tyrell. We intend no show of force." Renly nodded, gesturing for them to follow along the dock's walkway. We are prepared to escort you to the Red Keep, where accommodations await. The wedding is still 2 weeks away, but the city teems with guests already. My brother stands anxious to see if your freedman's expansions might overshadow these festivities, though he hopes not. May I inquire if Varos is among your party?" At that question, Jon and Daenerys exchanged a glance. "He is," Jon answered. "He soared overhead on his dragon, Maelstrom. You might see him soon enough, once he finds a place large enough to land. The beast's size dwarfs many city squares, so we deemed it wise not to bring him into the harbor. We expect Varos will approach the city outskirts, likely near the open fields beyond the walls, to avoid panic." Renly's eyes widened slightly. "I see. Well, that clarifies why your ships carry fewer dragons than rumored. My brother and Ned Stark have heard that Freedman's brood overshadow Balerion. But your presence, Daenerys, indicates at least some trust in us. We shall do our best to show courtesy in return." A hush settled. Freedman legionnaires stepped onto Westerosi soil with stoic discipline, forming a neat formation behind Daenerys and Jon. Oberyn flashed a grin at passing onlookers, while some gold cloaks eyed these foreign soldiers warily. Overhead, the sky remained bright, no silhouette of monstrous dragons yet visible. But all watchers half expected something dramatic. Indeed, they would not be disappointed. A shadow flickered across the sunlit harbor. Gasps sounded. People on the docks lifted their faces to behold a colossal form cutting through the sky. Maelstrom soared, easily thrice the size of any Targaryen dragon King's Landing had seen in living memory. The air vibrated with the powerful beat of its wings. The freedmen legionnaires, accustomed to such a sight, showed minimal reaction, but the local gold cloaks and commoners erupted in startled cries. Some fell to their knees, others scrambled behind crates. The sheer scale of the dragon made them recall nightmares of Balerion's fiery conquests. Yet this was worse, for Maelstrom's wingspan seemed to eclipse entire sections of the harbor district. Renly stared slack-jawed, managing only a quiet 7 above, as the dragon circled once, letting out a roar that echoed across the bay. Then, to the relief of all, Maelstrom banked away from the city's immediate sprawl, heading for open fields outside the walls. In a matter of moments, the thunderous wing beats faded, leaving behind a stunned hush. Daenerys watched calmly, having grown accustomed to Varos's method of making an entrance. He means no harm. He's finding a safe area to land. The city is too cramped for a beast so large. Once Varos dismounts, he'll likely approach on foot or lesser dragon, or a freedman escort. Renly exhaled slowly. Impressive, if terrifying. Come, let us not linger. The king, the hand, all will want a word. The realm expected you in moderate force, but that was beyond the scope of rumor. Truly a sign of freedman's might. They progressed through winding streets, greeted by half-panicked curiosity from the small folk. Targaryen banners had not flown in King's Landing in any official capacity since the old rebellion. Yet now Freedman's retinue marched openly, accompanied by Daenerys, calm as steel, with Jon at her side. Oberyn offered winks or flamboyant bows to passers-by, occasionally quipping about how the city always found new ways to be shocked. The gold cloaks parted the crowds with short commands, keeping the Freedman's column from being mobbed by onlookers. Eventually, they reached the Red Keep's outer gates, passing under the watchful eyes of more guards. Up twisting inclines, across a courtyard, and then the grand doors to the castle's interior. Once inside, they found themselves in an antechamber that led to the throne room. Word traveled swiftly that Daenerys Targaryen had arrived in King's Landing with Freedman's guards, Jon Snow, Oberyn Martell, and an unseen monstrous dragon sword just beyond the city's walls. Courtiers buzzed in hushed voices. Robert Baratheon, presumably in the throne room or a nearby hall, would soon greet them. From a high balcony overlooking the approach, Ned Stark and Robert had watched a portion of the Freedman's arrival. The moment they saw Maelstrom's colossal silhouette, Robert had let out an oath. 7 bloody hells, Ned. That overshadowed even my nightmares about Balerion. If that's the dragon Varos rides, we might not stand a chance in open war. But at least she came with a moderate retinue, not an invasion force. Ned, though equally startled by the dragon's immensity, responded with measured calm. We offered courtesy, Robert. She accepted. We must see it through. The freedmen's might is real. Let's meet them in good faith. If she wanted war, she could have begun it. Instead, she's come for a wedding. That alone suggests a willingness to talk. Robert huffed, stepping away from the balcony. I talk. Fine. Let's see if we can keep the realm from descending into a panic. Summon the guard to ensure order in the throne room. No fiasco like last time. Then we greet her. The wedding might still be weeks away, but apparently freedmen arrived early, no doubt to settle in. So the message was relayed. In the antechamber, Daenerys, Jon, and Oberyn were escorted forward. Freedmen legionnaires asked to remain outside or in designated quarters. The three advanced into the same throne room that once seemed so alien to Daenerys. The Iron Throne loomed, all twisted steel and legend. Robert perched at its base in a simpler seat for receiving important guests. Ned Stark stood at his right, calm but watchful. A handful of lords, including Renly, looked on. The tension in the hall felt thick enough to taste. Daenerys halted a respectful distance away, giving a slight dip of her head. Jon and Oberyn mirrored the gesture, though Oberyn's grin suggested he found the spectacle amusing. Robert studied Daenerys, taking in her regal bearing, the subtle Targaryen style to her pale braids, and the freedman insignia pinned at her shoulder. He forced a smile, rising from his seat. Daenerys Targaryen, we welcome you to King's Landing once more. It has been some time since the White Walker Wars. We are grateful you accepted our invitation. And you, Jon Snow, I see you remain close to your queen's cause. Prince Oberyn, your presence is always interesting. Daenerys answered in a measured voice, hands folded lightly before her. King Robert, Lord Stark, we come in peace. We heard you host a wedding for Robb Stark and Margaery Tyrell. You extended an invitation specifically naming me, Jon, and Varys. I would not ignore such courtesy. We arrive with minimal force, as you see. The monstrous dragon overhead is Varys's mount, Maelstrom. He awaits outside the city. We mean no harm. Ned gave a small bow of acknowledgement. Your presence is appreciated. The realm's lords gather for the wedding in 2 weeks. We can offer you quarters in the Red Keep, or if you prefer, we can find a suitable place for your freedman retinue. We only ask that you observe our laws and keep your dragons from causing alarm, as best you can. The city, as you might guess, is easily spooked by that scale of creature. Daenerys inclined her head. I understand. We shall comply. Our legionnaires remain moderate in number, enough only for personal safety. As for the dragons, we shall keep them outside city limits unless you invite them within. Varys himself will enter soon, once he dismounts Maelstrom. He is quite committed to showing we come with open hands, not a legion of flame. Robert let out a short laugh, though not entirely free of nerves. Yes, a wise approach. Let the small folk see you come as guests, not conquerors. I confess, your freedman's might has caused quite the stir. Rumors of dragons overshadowing Balerion swirl like wildfire. But for now, let us not dwell on that. The wedding approaches. We have space prepared for you near the royal apartments or, if you prefer, separate quarters. Up to you. Once Varys arrives, we can discuss any further concerns. For now, rest from your journey, and we welcome you properly at a feast in the morrow's eve. That fair? Daenerys exchanged a glance with Jon, who nodded subtly. She answered, That is fair, King Robert. We appreciate your hospitality. A feast tomorrow would be welcome. We shall wait for Varys to join us, and perhaps then we can speak more openly about freedmen expansions or any misunderstandings. But yes, for now, let us settle. Ned stepped forward, warmth in his eyes as he regarded Jon. It's good to see you again, though you stand on the other side of the sea these days. I trust we'll find time to talk about old times. Jon's voice carried a subdued warmth. I look forward to it, Lord Stark. I too have missed certain things about the North. We can speak privately if you wish, once we are settled. With that, the formal greeting concluded. Courtiers escorted Daenerys, Jon, and Oberyn to prepared suites. Freedmen legionnaires found assigned barracks near the keep's outer walls. Word quickly spread that the Targaryen queen had arrived well before the wedding day, accompanied by a monstrous dragon overhead that forcibly landed outside the city. The small folk whispered about Varos, the sorcerer rumored to have forged an empire in Essos. What manner of man would he be? Many half expected him to storm the gates, but the day passed calmly. That evening, the freedman retinue dined modestly in their quarters, resting from the voyage, while the city remained abuzz with talk. Over and over, the question repeated: if Daenerys Targaryen had come in peace, why overshadow the harbor with such a terrifying dragon? The next morning, King Robert, Ned, and a few lords stood at a vantage point atop the Red Keep's ramparts, scanning the horizon. A messenger had reported that Varos had arrived outside the city walls near an open field, dismounting from Maelstrom. The freedman's monstrous dragon was forced to remain there, presumably guarded by freedman officers. Robert spat curses about how seeing such a beast might cause half the farmland to quake in fear. Ned simply observed that at least it had not incinerated any farmland. They waited, impatient, for word that Varos approached the city gates in person. Eventually, a gold-cloaked scout signaled from below. Varos was indeed making his way on foot, accompanied by a smaller escort and a dragon only half as large as Maelstrom, though still massive by any Westerosi standard. The king cursed again, but resolved to meet him in the keep's courtyard to avoid letting the small folk mob them in the streets. Ned and Robert gathered a small retinue of knights and gold cloaks, ready at the main courtyard inside the Red Keep. Once more, tension soared. Freedmen and lords alike braced to see the rumored sorcerer behind unstoppable expansions. The courtyard gates opened, and in strode Varos, robed in that distinctive crimson and black, flanked by freedmen legionnaires. Beside him walked a smaller, though still formidable obsidian-scaled dragon, its eyes glowing faintly red. The courtyard's watchers stiffened at its presence but held formation. Robert, posture stiff, approached Varos with Ned at his side. Silence enveloped the space. Even the birds seemed to hush. Varos halted, studying the king and the hand. He offered a shallow bow, his tone cool but courteous. "King Robert, Lord Stark, I come at your invitation. My steed, Maelstrom, remains outside your walls to prevent panic. This smaller beast is known as Sableflame, a fraction of the size. We trust it will cause less alarm. I appreciate your willingness to host us. Daenerys and Jon have arrived, as you know. Now I stand before you, in the hope we can confirm that Freedman's empire holds no designs on conquering Westeros." Robert cleared his throat, warily eyeing the dragon. "A fraction of the size, you say? This beast still dwarfs the Targaryen dragons we once saw. But if it remains calm, we can manage. We appreciate your courtesy in leaving Maelstrom outside. The city's uneasy enough. Thank you for respecting that. We welcome you, Varos, to King's Landing. Our wedding draws near, and we trust your presence will remain peaceful." Varos nodded, his expression unreadable. "Peaceful, indeed. My freedman's empire focuses on ending slavery in Essos, not crossing the sea. That is the message I bring. We attend the wedding in good faith, to celebrate your realm's alliances. Let it stand as a sign of non-aggression." Ned, remembering the monstrous shadow overhead, found a hint of dryness in his throat. "We're grateful, Varos. If you require lodging, we have quarters arranged near Daenerys' suite. We simply ask you refrain from letting dragons roam within the city walls unescorted. Panic is not conducive to a joyous event." Varos offered a slight, polite smile. "I understand, Lord Stark. My beast shall remain tethered in a stable yard or courtyard of your choosing, so long as you provide adequate space and guards. This is your realm. I do not wish to appear a conqueror." Thus concluded the initial meeting. Freedmen legionnaires took positions assigned by the gold cloaks, ensuring no friction erupted. The city hummed with gossip. The rumored Valyrian sorcerer was real, his dragons real, but so far, no violence. Daenerys and Jon made quiet appearances in the Red Keep corridors, greeting lords with courtesy, acknowledging that they arrived to attend Robb's wedding. Some lords bowed stiffly, others openly gawked at Varos's mesmerizing presence. Daenerys remained poised, Jon watchful. The freedmen's arrival was overshadowed by 2 weeks of planned festivities, culminating in the grand wedding. And so the stage was set for a precarious interlude in which freedmen and Westerosi coexisted in the capital, each side wondering whether this alliance, this display of civility, might avert a future war or inadvertently spark something far greater.